how do you decide which sort of patient needs what specific type of psychedelic? As I mentioned before we start recording, like when I had two sessions, one was MDMA and the other one was MDMA and mushrooms combined. And the
Mhm.
as you said, this was done underground. This was not legal. It was done in Canada. There's no legality for this process. It was administered by a therapist, and there were people sitting in the room, and they did it. I think they adhered to some map scheduling as far as having some talk therapy beforehand to have set and setting, having people in the room that you know and trust that you've met before. Like they did their best towards it, and I had mostly good experience, but the MDMA session was vastly different from the MDMA and mushroom sessions, like different planets, if you will. So I'd love to hear how someone comes in and you're talking about what they're in for, what they're curious about, taking this sort of plant medicine, if you will. Yeah, how do you delineate who gets what?
Great question. Before I jump into my answer, do you know
Yeah.
what dose you were given with your MDMA and psilocybin combo? Just out of
Um,
curiosity.
yeah, I'm not totally sure. So I think the MDMA was a smaller amount than when I did the full dose. So
Sure.
and I can find out. That's a great question. So maybe it was 60 or 80 milligrams. I don't think it was a full MDMA dose, which I believe was 100 and something. And
Yeah,
then they originally suggested 4 grams of psilocybin, and I was like, that sounds like a
which is
lot.
huge. It is.
Yeah,
5 grams
and
is considered hero dose in terms of dried
right.
psilocybin. So yeah, 4 grams is huge.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we'll get into this right now then. So it was four, and there was the guy who he was a Gestalt therapist and a very nice guy, but there's something I felt uneasy about him a little bit, and so I'm like, let's just do two doses because that sounds like four sounds like a ton. So let's do two, and then I did both, and then during uh, the session or whatever, the full day, I went through. I maybe had 1 hour where I was super paranoid. Where I was like, "This motherfucker gave me 4 grams. He didn't tell me," and so I really like. Thankfully, there's one woman in the room who was seemed like a safe space for me at that time, and so I got a little paranoid, and I was even got up to go to the bathroom, and I had an episode where I was thinking like, my whole life I avoided these sorts of drugs, and now these mushroom people got me. They got me. Here I am, and I'm under their spell now, and it took me a bit to come down from that. And overall, I think I greatly benefited from some of the, I don't want to say wisdom, but like perspective I got from that journey. But
Mhm.
it took me several months for the anxiety to taper down after that that experience. So yeah, I always tell people MDMA. I see a lot of benefit in a clinical setting. However, like the psilocybin, especially maybe at the dose I had, or maybe it's the conjunction with MDMA. Um, I say I don't know. This is like the microdosing psilocybin. I found good benefits for it, like going for a hike with friends and all things like that. But that was a hell of an experience for me.
I could imagine. And and the doses as well sound very high for what they are. So as we know, like the MAPS protocol, MDMA is about 120 milligrams, and then maybe a 70 milligram top up if required, depending on
Right.
the person. So everybody's going to be very different. It's a myth around body type, body size, and gender and age.
Mm,
Everybody metabolizes medicine very differently, and these medicines are no different. And that said, when we're talking about psilocybin, with the clinical psilocybin, I believe the dose is 25 milligrams of psilocybin itself. So they've actually extracted it all out of the mushroom, and it's just the straight psilocybin, like the
wow.
psilocybin, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like in the clinical setting and the way the pharmaceutical world has been able to extract these medicines and develop them, really takes a lot of the guesswork out because the doses are very standardized.
Right.
But don't think that they don't do the same. They don't pack the same sort of punch. If you know what I mean.
Sure. And so it's how many milligrams of psilocybin do they
I believe
administer?
it's 25 milligrams of psilocybin. So it's actually the psychedelic side of the psilocybin. So
Right.
if you
So
look
that's
at the
two and a half
mushroom,
grams, right?
I believe it falls around there to three, 2.5 to 3
Okay.
equivalent dried psilocybin, I believe, is what the equivalent weighs out to be. Don't quote me on
Right.
that
Yeah.
though. Could
And
get that
they
wrong.
never combine them. I would imagine
No,